What's up, what's up, what's up? Today we're doing the movie slash show slash documentary wrap up for the year 2023. This year I definitely watched more than I read. No reason for that other than simply I just didn't have time to do anything really thought intensive like reading. I was able to consume a lot of digital film content this year, though. It's really all I had time to consume. And I got through a lot this year, guys. I got through a lot of really good movies, really good shows, really good documentaries. I've also had my fair share of like flops this year watching. And so I'll give you my list of the top 20 movies that I watched in 2023. Top 20, these are in no particular order. I'll also be doing top 5 shows along with the top 3 documentaries I watched, because I watched a lot of documentaries this year. And then, like I always do, at the end, I'll be giving my least favorites along with maybe honorable mentions. So, let's get into it. How I go down this list usually is I usually go in order in which they were watched. So, that's the particular order that I'm going in, if you are so curious. Okay. First movie. Oh, shit. Just dropped a pencil. Doesn't matter. The show must go on. First movie was called Brothers. This movie was absolutely phenomenal. It had Jake Gyllenhaal, Natalie Portman, and Tobey Maguire. Amazing cast. Along with the girl that played the little girl in the Drake and Josh Merry Christmas movie. She was in a lot of movies back in the early 2000s. Don't know whatever happened to her, but she was great. This movie was so accurate to, real life, how shit really looks after an event like that. But basically the whole plot line of the movie was, Tobey Maguire, was overseas in the Middle East, basically, and, gets captured, and is away for so long that his family and everyone thinks that he's gone. And so they live their life in accordance to that philosophy that he is just gone, he'll never come back. And then he comes back, and he's not the same person as he was before. And the whole movie focuses on what that does to a family, what that does to a person's psyche, and the rearranging of how families work when someone's away like that. And it was just such a great movie, such a accurate movie, honestly. There are so many scenes in this movie that were just fantastic. Quite honestly, absolutely fantastic. The dinner scene, the kitchen scene, both of those are more towards the end of the movie, but it was just so real. Like, if you've dealt with this, like, it's very real. It was so real. It was honestly, and Natalie Portman, she just phenomenal job as the mother, phenomenal job. I mean, so real, so raw. I couldn't recommend this movie enough, honestly. I don't know how I haven't watched it before this year, last year, but it was just top tier cinema, honestly. Um, definitely an amazing movie. Must watch, must watch. Although I will say it would be triggering to people that have been through a war, probably. Definitely triggering to people that have the same illness portrayed in the film. Even triggering to family that's had to deal with stuff like that. So it's a tough film to watch, but even the soundtrack was just so. The soundtrack just fit the movie perfectly. I don't know how they did that, but the soundtrack just it just fit like a glove. There's some happy moments in the story, with the uncle who's played by Jake Gyllenhaal. This the the three of those actors and actresses combined, like wow, like what a pairing, what a star-studded cast, honestly, uh, loaded cast. It was an amazing movie. Um, the next movie on my list that I'd been meaning to watch for so long, and because of all the hype, everybody was so hyped over the movie, Train to Busan. Um, I actually like this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to like it. It's a movie about a kind of zombie apocalypse, like, that basically damn near comes out of nowhere, and how the people on the train deal with it, or the people traveling deal with it. It was more of like a horror thriller movie, but it was a fun watch. If you don't mind reading the captions, because what made me stop watching this movie in the beginning was I was watching a dubbed version, and if you watch dubbed version anything, you're honestly a psycho. But so I had to find the closed captions version, and I didn't mind reading it, and it was a fun watch. Um, Next movie I watched in 2023 was called Out of the Furnace. This was a really gritty, dark film, aesthetically disturbing, honestly, but and even the plot line disturbing, but it was. I didn't expect to like it. I really like this film. Um, it focuses on. Let's see. And one thing that I will say, this year, similar to last year, I went on kind of like a Jake Gyllenhaal binge. I went on a Christian Bale binge this year. Some of the movies that you'll see on this list have him in it. That's just because I binged a lot of his movies this year, and he's a damn good actor. This movie had Christian Bale in it, Casey Affleck, Woody Harrelson, Forrest Whitaker, Willem Dafoe, and the plot line, it focuses on two brothers, and they're two brothers going down two separate paths, and one of the brothers is basically blue-collar worker, and then the other one returns after going to war, and has no idea what to do with himself. And so what does he do? He gets entangled with all the wrong people, and gets caught up in some illegal stuff, some crime, and gets caught up gambling and stuff like that. And the area in which all of this takes place, like I said, is really a dark, gritty, aesthetically disturbing movie. Woody Harrelson plays the bad guy. Willem Dafoe plays like the brother's manager in the whole bare knuckle fist fighting scene. And something happens to the brother, something happens to the manager, and basically Christian Bale is left to put the pieces back together and to try and figure out what occurred. It's a great movie in my opinion. I thought it was a great cast, and just very interesting movie. There's not many movies that have the setting that this one does. I think that's why it made the list. Because it doesn't really, a lot of the movies don't really go into this kind of a scene. It's most Hollywood movies are very generic in this in the setting that they pick. So I had fun. I'm not gonna say I had fun watching it, but it was an interesting watch. I'll put it that way. The fourth movie I watched that in 2023 that got on this list was High School Confidential. For some reason, I remember a friend of mine's in high school telling me about this movie and how much I'd like it. I didn't just like it, I loved it. It was very relatable in many different ways. John Malkovich did a great job. Mainly stuck with Max Minghella. He's literally one of my favorite actors of all time. Very good looking. If I can add that in here, but I love that movie. I really, really did. It was fun. And like I said, I could have sworn I was recommended to watch it. Whoever recommended me that movie, if they did recommend it, you definitely know me and you definitely know my taste, because not just like the plot line of the movie, but just like Max Minghella. Like, yeah, he's definitely my type. He's one of the main reasons why I'm still watching him. Bradley Whitford and the woman that plays Aunt Lydia. Yeah, you definitely know me. Whoever gave me that recommendation, like, you know me. So yeah, I was shocked I hadn't watched it before. It was relatable in so many different ways. It was hilarious as well. The fifth movie I watched this year was The Boondock Saints, with Patrick Flannery and Norman Reedus. Honestly, it was so funny. It was like, and what's crazy about it is it wasn't even from that long ago. You know what I mean? Like, the movie wasn't made that long ago. And what's crazy about it is a lot of the jokes that were made just could not fly today. Like, literally could not fly. And it honestly kind of makes me sad for the time period that even I grew up in and the kids of today, because they really don't know what comedy is and they really don't know what it's like to laugh, because everything's got to be so fucking politically correct. But this movie was absolutely hilarious. I mean, absolutely hilarious. Willem Dafoe, I think, was definitely my favorite part in the movie for sure. He was a highlight, definitely. Definitely. I was honestly I was not impressed. I'll say this. This is my only critique of the movie. I was not impressed with Norman Reedus' accent in this movie. That was the only thing that, like, really could have been done better, and the movie would have been, like, definitely really amazing if he had just worked on that. You could tell Sean Patrick Flannery, like, I mean, look at his name. He's probably somewhat Irish, but he did a really good job with the accent, and I felt like where Norman kind of fell off, Sean Patrick Flannery kind of picked up the pace with that. I thought it was a unique plot line. It was just so funny. It was so funny. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. But it just makes me sad, like, for the time that we're living. Like, it just makes me sad. Like, those kind of jokes should still be able to be made, like, without somebody getting so fucking bent out of shape over it. It's just sad. It also makes me sad for the change that even Norman Reedus has went through. It seems like they've taken two seriously different paths in life. And this is just perspective after seeing interviews and other stuff with the both of them this year. I feel like Sean Patrick Flannery has went a more traditional, more American. I don't even like using the word conservative anymore. I just like the American route Whereas Norman Reedus, like, as much as I love him in The Walking Dead and his own show now, it's just like he's so given into the system. And I'll leave it there because the last thing I want is this main channel to get binged. It's just, yeah. I think I respect Sean Patrick Flannery a little bit more after this year than I did Norman Reedus, and we'll leave it there. I still love Norman Reedus, but the guy's kind of like kowtowing to the system, if you know what I mean, in certain ways. So, the sixth movie on this list is The Big Short. Now, guys, this movie, if you haven't watched this movie, I don't care if you went through, you can say you went through it, blah, blah, blah. A lot of regular people don't have a full understanding of the kind of shenanigans that were going on and how bad it was. And a lot of people really still don't have a clue as to why this story is still so damn relevant. This movie was more than phenomenal. I think if I had to pick one movie out of the year that really stuck with me, it was The Big Short. It's based on a true story. It's based on the 2008 financial crisis. And it was free on YouTube for a while. It's free on Pluto now. So go watch it now, please. Please. Some parts of this movie is funny, some parts of it not. It's written in a way where it's easily consumed by the average American. They broke it down in such a simple way, and a lot of the issues, a lot of them that are in this movie are so relevant, even more than they were then. They're even more relevant now. This movie was made in 2015. It couldn't be more relevant now. It really could not be. There's a reason why this movie's under the title here with the Google. It says comedy/documentary. Yeah, it's damn near a documentary, guys. It's a documentary in a way, in a easily, like I said, easily consumed format. This movie has Steve Carell in it, Christian Bale, Ryan Gosling, Brad Pitt, Jeremy Strong, Marisa Tomei, Finn Wittrock. He was in The Social Network, Margot Robbie, and then you see a lot of other kind of famous people that they just make appearances, like Selena Gomez. There's a word for what I'm talking about, but anyway. It focuses on Michael Burry, who was really the first person to be made aware of the crisis at the time. Mark Baum, Ben Rickert, and Jared Vinette. And this story is so, I can't even say it. I could sit here and say so relevant a million times, a billion times. You guys really need to watch this movie and take a look at what's going on now. And it's the same thing, but on steroids. On steroids, guys. It's so relevant. You guys have got to watch this movie. I'm not even joking. If you're going to do one thing in the year 2024, if you haven't already watched this movie, you need to sit down tonight and watch this movie. I'm telling you, this is your assignment. This is your homework. Please watch this movie. Please. I'm begging you. It's going to come in handy this year, in my opinion, for you to know this, all of what had went on, and recognize the signs of what we're going through now. Christian Bale did such a great job. Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, Brad Pitt, like, they all made the movie. They were so... I think what I really loved about this movie is that they didn't gloss over and really focused in on not just the whole picture, but it really focused in on what it did to the average American. What it did to the average American and how it happened and what the lead up was. And let me tell you something. Michael Burry was in the news last year a lot. Because the truth is, we're seeing patterns that we're seeing in the run up to 2008. And that's a whole different story. But if you haven't watched this movie, please go watch it now. Really, probably, if I had to rate the best movie I saw all year, it was definitely The Big Short. No doubt. No doubt. If I had to pick one that was like, this is the number one movie I saw, The Big Short for sure. I watched another movie that was very similar, in the way that it was presented to the public. Also based on a true story called Shock and Awe. It's about the Iraq war that we got into. You'll see a lot of patterns. Again, this is another movie you really should watch because it's very relevant to what's going on now. You're really starting to see a lot of the same patterns and similarities in what's going on now in the real world to what happened in the lead up to a 2008, 9/11, a Iraq war, Afghani war. Rob Reiner was in this movie. Woody Harrelson played like the main character. Tommy Lee Jones was in it. And so was James Marsden. This movie focused on a group of reporters that were focused on basically exposing basically exposing the true reason for entering the war and also the flaw in the logic behind getting the war, behind getting into the war. If you haven't seen this movie or you don't know the story of what had happened or you don't know the history, American history, modern American history, to understand why we did certain things and how things got to the point that we're at now, please watch these two movies that I'm telling you about. Between The Big Short and this one, please just watch these two movies, please. Shock and Awe. I love that movie. Next movie on the list was called On a Wing to Prayer. This came out, I believe it came out this year, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. On a Wing. Oh, shit. Here we go. Okay. This movie came out last year. It had Dennis Quaid playing the main character. Heather Graham was in this movie along with Jesse Metcalfe. This movie focused on a true story, another true story of a man who took a private flight with his private pilot, and the guy dies midair. And he tries to save his family. He had taken some flight courses and attempts to save his family, and the guy who Jesse Metcalfe played the guy that was basically, I don't want to say air traffic controller, but he was like, I don't know if he was a retired pilot or something like that, and he had helped him through the process of attempting to land the plane. And I found it beyond interesting that this movie came out last year for a plethora of reasons, in which I get into my Instagram, which I get into all the time on my Instagram. There have been a lot of close calls and a lot of actual crashes and a lot of things that have happened this year that I just think it's very important to pay attention to the timing and the release of this movie. I highly would recommend watching this movie. For sure. It was great. I loved it. Would highly recommend. I will say, one release is that not? I'm gonna have to take a look at his. Dennis Quaid has also made a Grid Down documentary, which I didn't know if it was released, and from what it looks like it was released. So I'll have to take a look at that. I thought that movie was great, and again, pay attention to the timing of when this movie was released. Please pay attention to it. So the next one on my list is another, guys, I know you're sick of the movies about true stories, but this one was another really good one. Um, and it was funny because I had never known who Ezra Miller was, and I guess that's just probably because I have better taste in film and cinema, that I never saw this guy. But I did see a movie with him for the first time in it this year, based on a true story called The Stanford Prison Experiment. This There's so many different experiments throughout the course of American history that are really important to understanding how the human brain works. And this movie shows you how dark, evil, and demonic a person can turn into just by the influence of other people, and by being put in a a position of power, even if it's not warranted, just what that does to a person and how it changes them. This movie is actually amazing. And it's really based on a true story. They actually did this. This is before any public kind of backlash could ever come from doing an experiment like this. And basically, it was a group of college students that did this for money. And half of them played prisoners, the other half played the cops, the wardens, whatever you want to call them. And the psychological breaking down of what, not only just what the prison system does to a person, but what the power and authoritarian nature of control and how that can break down people, a person, a society, and how the kind of discord can get sown through all that. It was just another kind of must-watch movie. The cast, let's go to the cast. This movie had Ezra Miller, Michael Angarano, which he looks very similar to a bunch of other people, but Logan Miller, Thomas Mann, Chris Sheffield, Moses Arias, Miles Heiser, Ki-Hong Lee. It had a real loaded cast. And I was surprised that I had never watched this movie. James Walk. I was surprised that I had never watched this movie before. It was a really good film. And, to be honest, really amazing portrayal of what had actually occurred. The next movie on this list was called, My Cousin Vinny. I absolutely loved that movie. It was hilarious. I couldn't believe I didn't watch it before. I absolutely love Ralph Macchio and Joe Pesci, and again, Marisa Tomei was in it. If you haven't watched this movie, what are you doing? It's funny. It's just hilarious. So definitely loved it. Definitely a great comedy to watch if you're trying to get a laugh. It's pretty funny. I also watched a different comedy that isn't on this list. Oh my gosh, it may not even be on this list. I don't think it is. Did I put it on here? I'm looking for it. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I don't think I put it on this list. Okay, well, I watched another comedy that was... Okay, I think I'm actually going to switch my list around. See, every now and then this happens to me. I'm actually going to switch my list around. Here. So just... switching my list around. Okay, that's much better. I'm also switching Okay. Okay, I think I've got it here. Okay. What page were we on? Okay. Sorry about that. Had to revise my list a little bit. The next movie that I watched this year, again, based on a true story. It was called Worth, and it was based on the story of the 9/11 fund. It has Michael Keaton and Stanley Tucci in it. The last movie I saw with them both in it together was Spotlight, and I told you that's one of my favorite movies of all time. This one's no different. They just make an amazing team, in my opinion. This movie is about the focuses on the lawyer Kenneth Feinberg, and what he had to do to get the people what they deserved, and the journey to getting to that point, and really focusing in on some really intense questions of morals, morality, and just how much is a human life worth, and is everybody equal, and are they all worth the same? And the truth of it is, and people can say what they want about everybody's equal and everybody's, blah, blah, blah. That's just not true. And that's simply just not true. And just the strict facts of it is that some people produce more and do more for this planet than others do. And there's nothing wrong with saying something like that. It's just a simple fact. And this movie addresses the emotional, psychological trauma and the many mixed, the different stories, and how they're not all the same, and how they have to look at them all differently, because not everybody's situation is the same. Some went through more than others. Some people left behind kids. Some people left behind spouses that relied on them. And there were so many different questions posed in this movie. So many. It was just such a powerful movie. This movie was released in 2020. Please go watch it. It's one of the best movies made in recent times. I'm not even joking. So yeah, that was a great movie that had to be on the list. Definitely made probably top 3 of this year for sure. Top 3 for sure. Probably comes close second behind The Big Short, and then Shock and Awe is probably third for this year. If I had to give a top 3, Worth was definitely up there for sure. And Michael Keaton just does such a great job. I mean, really, this man is so underrated. And so is Stanley Tucci. Like, I'm telling you, it's just, I love them both together for whatever reason. They're just amazing. The other movie that I saw this year that really was quite the interesting plot line, it just really, for me, was a piece on a really well done movie, a really well done piece on marriage, and how things can change, and how things are inevitable to change, and how different people take it differently, and the kind of struggle that has to be dealt with. And it was called We Don't Live Here Anymore. And it's a really messy movie. And it's really a really important, honestly, it's really an important movie to watch if you're even contemplating marriage. It was made in 2004, and I just think that it does a really good job explaining the difficulties really does a great job summing it up pretty well. The main couple in this movie is Mark Ruffalo and Laura Dern. That's who play the main characters. And in the movie, they're going through a real rough patch. And then Ruffalo decides to complicate the issue by stepping out on her, and then becomes involved with his best friend's wife. And then they just interchange and whatever, and it's a really, really interesting movie. Really interesting movie. I think really, again, messy is really what sums up this movie. I watched a few other movies with Mark Ruffalo in it this year. None of them were as good as this one. This movie covered some really difficult topics. And I highly recommend you watch this if you're even considering, like I said, if you're even considering getting married, because certain things just, this movie just did a really good job on highlighting the extreme difficulty in being in a strict, like, full on, like, it just, things are bound to go south. So they did a really good job on this. I thought they all did such a great job playing the roles, and very real, very realistic, honestly. The movie that I was going to put on this list, we'll talk about that later, but I realized I didn't have a movie on here, and this movie that got replaced in this spot, and it was called if I can even find it. It was called The Internship. It's a comedy about two grown guys looking to better their lives and find a better paying job with Google. And the two main characters are played by Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. Dylan O'Brien happens to be in this movie along with Max Minghella. And I think she okay, anyway, this movie was really good. It was really funny, quite hilarious, and I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was a funny comedy. I was surprised I never watched it. It's got a few other people in it, as well. The cast is loaded, and I thought it was a funny movie. A more serious movie. I know what you guys are going to say. Oh my god, another movie based on a true story. Yes, guys. I have another movie based on a true story on this list called The Fighter. This movie was amazing. I couldn't believe I hadn't watched this before. It's a boxing movie, and it focuses on the true story of Mickey Ward, who's played by Mark Wahlberg, and his half brother Dickie, played by Christian Bale, along with their 7 sisters, and their mother and their father, and Mickey's girlfriend, played by Amy Adams. This movie was so good. To think that this was based off of a true story is just amazing. It's a real story of American excellence, honestly. Stories that we don't hear of anymore these days because there's no such thing as American excellence or exceptionalism anymore. But This story was really amazing. It was really funny at times, really serious at times, really touched on a lot of, again, raw subjects. Um, like jail, like drugs, like a whole bunch of different things. Addiction, family business, and just a really good film. I had a lot of there were a lot of relatable moments in this movie. A lot of really relatable moments. It was just I just loved this film. It was just I couldn't believe I hadn't watched it before. So if you haven't watched this movie before and you're thinking about it, you should go watch it. It was for free on a few different platforms last year, and I'm sure it'll come back again at some point during this year. But a really good movie. I thought Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale actually did a really good job playing brothers, and a really good job actually playing the characters that they played, because just especially Christian Bale, like I thought he did such a great job in this movie. But phenomenal movie, honestly. Just gets you hype. Like, I love boxing movies, I really do. Definitely a favorite. I watched the modern Fright Night. Now, I think that it looks like there's a second one. It's got a few people in it that I wasn't really... Anyway, I watched the Fright Night from 2011 with, what's his name? Colin Farrell. This movie was so funny. I love vampire movies and I love comedies, and I watched this during October and it was so, it just hit like every, like, it just hit everything for me. Like, it was so good. It was such a good, like, I loved it. It was a fun watch. Hilarious. This has become like now October favorite of mine. Like, this is really a great vampire movie. No, I haven't watched the old ones, and no, I haven't watched the most recent one, but now that I've watched this one, I want to go back and watch them all, because that was a really good movie. I put Sound of Freedom on this list because I have a lot of mixed feelings on this movie, and I'll get into that here. Sound of Freedom just simply had to be on this list. And the reason why is because it made such a wave when, similar to Oppenheimer, Barbie, it made such a huge wave in the truther community. And just the news and how they covered this movie was just so disingenuous. It's unbelievable. But it had to make this list. It was what I would call a softball on the problem of human trafficking, child trafficking. I have seen movies that hit way harder on this subject, namely Paradise Highway, as well as The Black Phone, which is a fictional story. Fictional story, but I feel like those were way more hard-hitting and gut-wrenching than this movie. Not saying that this movie didn't have its moments, but what I'm saying is I've had this discussion with friends of mine, and more than anything, this was a softball movie to start a discussion. And there's nothing wrong with that. It did what it was there to do, which is to start the conversation. In my opinion, it would have been 10 times more impactful if it was a story based in the U.S., like Paradise Highway was. If it was a story based in the U.S., like The Black Phone was, it would have been much more impactful and much more hard-hitting and relevant to the subject I think they were trying to address. There's nothing wrong with the film. It's a good film. It's based on a true story. And it's a story that I think needed to be told for the time. There's nothing wrong with the film. It's a very well-produced film. You would not know that it was I'm not going to say indie, but I'm going to say outside of the grips of Hollywood production. You wouldn't have known because it was just that well-produced, well-written, well-filmed, well-acted in. The truth is, like I said, it was a story that needed to be told. It was kind of more, it wasn't as hard hitting as other ones, but it needed to be told. And the truth is they did a really good job with the budget that they had and with the goal that they had in mind. It took so long to produce because of the fact that they were doing it in more of an independent way and that they had to get someone to buy it first. And so I think that the end result is really good. Really good. I'm actually gonna go in on this list and actually make a correction because I'm just now realizing something else. There we go. Just fixed it. Okay, just fix the list. Okay, so yeah, that had to be on the list. The other movie that had to be on this list was Nefarious. That movie did a good job at what is a very good thing to do a job at, which is to have the movie mainly take place in one room and not leave that room and still have it being entertaining. That is one of the most difficult things to do in cinema, in literature. It is one of the most difficult things to do, is to keep your audience engaged all the while keeping them in the same room for the majority of the movie or whatever content you're trying to make. This movie was, again, another marker, much like Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel. This was another marker in 2023. It has to be put on this list because of the significance. The movie is based around a serial killer whose last thing to do is to speak to a psychiatrist before they actually put him on the electric chair. And the movie showcases the topic of demonic possession without it being what's the word? Without it being silly or unrealistic or difficult to watch. This movie did a real good job focusing on the subject of demonic possession. The realness of showing you that a lot of what these criminals or just people that commit horrific acts do, what they're going through, could be, yes, washed over and glazed over with being said that they were mentally ill, when the truth of the matter is the truth of the matter is that it's actually, in a lot of cases, way more complicated and way more complex than just saying somebody has a mental illness. In a lot of the cases, these people are actually truly, the argument could be made is that they're demonically possessed, just based on their extremely erratic behavior. But erratic behavior in the way that the erratic behavior has a purpose. And if somebody's mentally ill, what they're doing has no purpose. Does that make any sense? I hope what I'm saying makes sense. It did a great job showcasing it. I thought the way the story was written was great. I thought, again, Sean Patrick Flanery did an amazing job in this movie, and you could tell he's taking a much different path than Norman Reedus has in his career, and I really respect Sean Patrick Flanery for that. Glenn Beck made an appearance, and really the two main characters were played by Sean Patrick Flanery and Jordan Belfi. An amazing film, really. It was, again, somewhat digestible. I enjoyed it. The other movie that I watched this year that I thought was really, really, really good, it's an old one, but I loved it. And it was called Witness for the Prosecution. Okay. I'm not sure if I had watched it in black and white or if it was in color. I think I might have watched it in black and white. It really doesn't matter. It was an amazing movie from the 50s. And it was honestly hilarious. Honestly, there were so many plot twists in this film. It was kind of crazy. Some of them were predictable. Some of them were less predictable than others. Really, really great movie. You guys know that I'm kind of a old soul, traditional kind of person. I really can get down with watching some of these old movies, and truthfully, a lot of the old movies are a lot better than the new ones, because in the old movies they can say things that people today just can't say, and it makes it a lot funnier. This movie, it's classified as a thriller mystery, but I would also say comedy, because there's a lot of parts of this movie that were quite hilarious. Charles Lawton was in this movie. Tyrone Power and Marlon Dietrich played in this movie, and I loved it. I loved every minute of this movie. The other movie that I really, really loved was called House on Haunted Hill. I think there have been a few remakes, maybe one remake, I'm not sure, but let me see. Why is this not coming up? I'm trying to bring this up for you. Was it House on Haunted Hill? I don't know what's going on here. Why is it? It's not letting me pull up the movie because I'm trying to get the plot line for you. I mean, I know what it's about, but okay, I have it here. Yeah, it is House on Haunted Hill. It's, if you like Clue, you're going to like this movie. Okay. This movie is, again, extremely hilarious. It's classified as a horror mystery. A lot of these movies, older movies, tend to be a lot funnier than movies today because of the shit that they're able to get away with saying. And it was just a hilarious movie. This movie, like I said, it's very Clue-like because the truth is, it's a murder mystery, haunted house. It's like all of what you would want in the month of October. And I'll just read the plot line for you. It says, rich oddball Frederick Lauren has a proposal for 5 guests at a possibly haunted mansion. They show up, and their goal is to survive a night filled with scares and receive $10,000 each. Now, back in the 50s, that money was a big deal. The guest of honor is Lauren's estranged wife, Annabelle, who with her secret lover, Dr. Trent, has concocted her own scheme to scare Lauren's associate, Norm Manning, into blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm not even... Basically, it's a group of people trying to survive the night in this house. And there's a lot of things that go on. It's very Clue-like, and you get thrown in a million different directions. And if you're smart, you'll be able to figure this one out. It's a really good mystery, haunted house sort of story, and then kind of turns into a murder mystery. The last movie on this list that I watched in the year 2023 is pretty obvious. Another movie that made a mark this year. Towards the end of the year, but I watched it during the year, and it was called Leave the World Behind. This movie, actually, you know what's funny? I honestly don't know if I could pick top 3s or favorites here, because this movie came pretty close. I would say this movie tied for first place with The Big Short, because of the relevance, the cultural impact that this movie had in such a short amount of time. In just, honestly, guys, a week's time is stunning. Stunning, the impact that this movie had. Like I had said in my reading wrap-ups, like I said in my top 6 movies, 6 books read this year, the book made my top 6, and the movie made top 20 movies. This movie was so multi-layered. That's why we're going to get into it. We're either going to get into it on this channel or on Rumble, my other channel. I haven't made up my mind. But this movie left such a mark on things. There were so many quotes, the plot line, so relevant, so realistic, so many things in this movie was just perfectly done. The racial commentary was another huge part of this that was more alluded to. There were so many things that were alluded to in the book that were not in your face as this movie delivered the content. That's why the movie is, in my opinion, better than the book. And like I said, we'll get into that on a video comparing the two eventually. This movie had Julia Roberts in it, Ethan Hawke, Kevin Bacon, Mahershala Ali. He played Boggs in the Hunger Games franchise. And Myla Harold. The one main difference in this movie that I wasn't a big fan of at all was changing Ruth from being his wife in the book to his daughter in the movie. I thought it made zero sense because in the book they were concerned about their daughter, which makes more sense. It makes more sense that him and his wife would be together in the city. And so that was the main problem I had with that was like the main plot change that I thought made no sense. it made more of a sense with the dynamic of two adults, with the two other adults. Just the way that the book had set it up so perfectly. That was my only issue. Other than that, the movie was actually 10 times better than the book. I usually can never say that, and it makes me proud that I can say that with this one. There were so many comments made on who'd produced this movie, the contents of this movie, the realism of this movie, the foreshadowing of the events that may or may not happen in the near future. This movie was the movie, in my opinion, was the movie of 2023. Stole the show. At the end of the show. Stole the show. This movie did. And I had so many different conversations with so many different people about this movie. So many different perspectives and things seen that were not seen if you weren't really paying attention. I think the best breakdown for now, while you wait for my video on this, is from Canadian Prepper. He did such a great job breaking this movie down, and he didn't even read the book and couldn't even get into all the layers of that. But there were so many important points. Like, this is a movie that you really need to sit down and really listen and really, really watch and really pay attention to what they're telling you. And that's all I can say, honestly, about this movie. This movie was the best movie I've honestly seen in a long time. And you know me, guys. You know this is my wheelhouse. This is my area of expertise. I'm a subject matter expert when it comes to the dystopian and post-apocalyptic genre. I was so thrilled over this movie. This movie stole the show, and it really gave me hope for book to movie adaptations going forward. This year had a lot of great book to movie and show adaptations. It was unbelievable. This movie is going to be talked about for years to come. It's going to be talked about and referenced a lot in the near future. This is one of the biggest pop culture pieces in this entire year. There were a lot of movies that came out this year that really, really made an impact, and that's how you know we're on the precipice of something large. And this is what I'll say, and I'll leave it there, and then we'll move into the other subjects. This is how you know we're on the precipice of something huge. When you have all these big artistic advancements happening in just 1 year alone. 1 year alone, we had Sound of Freedom. We had Nefarious. We had Barbie. We had Oppenheimer. Those are like more pop culture things. I'm not really concerned about those. That made a huge mark on society is what you could say. You had Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which I haven't watched yet. But plan on very soon. You had that, and then you had this, and all of those movies consecutively, back to back, really show you something. We're on the precipice of something large, because this kind of film renaissance we had following 2020, on the heels of 2020, it's kind of a sign of things to come. And as much as I want to say it's a great thing, it's really not. Because when you start to peak in a society like this, where the movies are so good, where the music is so good, where the art is just so good, you're usually on the precipice of a collapse. And that pains me to say, but it's the truth. It's just how history works. When you're peaking in your artistic abilities as a society, it's usually a sign of really bad things to come. And that's what I think this movie ending the year off. I understand how powerful it was to end the year off cinematically with this film. Leaving it's in the name, it's in the timing of when they released this movie, it's in the plot line of this movie. The fact that they ended the year off with this movie release is so profound and impactful and so, again, multi-layered. The title, Leave the World Behind, you could go a million different places with just the fact that title, name, and the fact that that movie was released at the end of the year. I can't even go. It's just so many. My brain, like, going all these different places with the film, it's really something to be addressed and talked about in the review of this movie. The video specifically dedicated to this book and this movie. Such a huge impact. Definitely one of my favorite, probably my all-time favorite post-apocalyptic movie, because you got to understand the post-apocalyptic genre and the dystopian genre are two different genres within a genre of sci-fi fiction. Close cousins, honestly. Post-apocalyptic represents a story told after a catastrophic world-ending event. Dystopia is the world maybe ended, maybe didn't, but somebody took control of the situation at hand, and it's now more of like a totalitarian, authoritarian kind of system, world, landscape. And so that's the difference between them. They're close cousins, honestly. Dystopian and post-apocalyptic, very close cousins. But this is now by far my favorite post-apocalyptic movie ever. And that's saying a lot from the post-apocalyptic dystopian queen. I'm telling you, this is the best post-apocalyptic film I've ever watched personally myself. It hits so many different subjects. It's definitely my favorite of all time, for sure now. So that says a lot, honestly. Now we're going to go into the shows that I watched and which ones made the list. We're doing top 5 shows. I watched a lot of shows this year. A lot of different shows. Some of them were total disappointments, like Station 11. Total disappointments. But I watched a lot of shows, and I'll give you my favorites for the year. Top 5. I started off this year watching The Man in the High Castle. I was watching it during a big project that I was working on that hopefully I can finally get edited for the new year. This show is based on the book by Philip K. Dick. I did not read the book. I have not ever read any of Philip K. Dick's works because his works are so difficult to find. I'll probably end up having to buy them online soon. But it focused on the whole plot line of the show is, what if the Third Reich won World War II? And what if the Japanese teamed up with them and all the rest? Honestly, guys, the argument could be made that we never won World War II. Okay? And that's a whole different subject. That's not a subject suited for this main channel. The truth is, this is one of the best sci-fi shows that I've seen in my entire life. Again, it covered so many different subject matter, so many different so much material was covered in this. What would the Japanese have done? How would that have affected them? Would they have got turned on eventually in the end? Would they have eventually tried to fight their way to the top with the Third Reich? What would that have looked like? And I really, really feel like this movie did a really good job portraying the what ifs. I also feel like, and this is one of the main reasons I've recommended this show to people, is the exploration of time travel, of not just time travel, but interdimensional travel, and the theory of that, and the topic of that. And this show really showcases that subject matter in a way that I've never even seen anyone cover that topic with such accuracy, pinpoint accuracy. And the whole, again, theory that there's multiple dimensions where you exist, and how can they eventually coincide, and are there different realities? Does our world look different in a different dimension, in a different reality? Do we always end at the same spot? What does that look like? What does it look like if you mess with the dimensions? What does it look like if you hop from one dimension to the next? Do you mess with history? There are so many questions that you have with that kind of time travel, interdimensional travel theory. That is a real theory that was actually proposed, and I find it funny that they put that in the show. That was actually one of the biggest things that the Third Reich was looking into. They did a lot of scientific experiments. For as evil and maniacal as those people were, they really did attempt to get to the bottom of a lot of the world's biggest questions. And that was one of them that they had tried to get to the bottom of. And there's a few others that they had tried to get to the bottom of as well. But this show really did a phenomenal job. And that's why I keep recommending the show to people. A phenomenal job of really showing the possibility in that reality, possible reality of time travel between dimensions. Really fascinating stuff, seriously. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that Twilight Zone-y stuff that you'll sit back and you'll think, you'll marinate and resonate, and low-key kind of go crazy over asking these questions that have been posed for centuries and millennia, and the kind of hard-hitting what is life kind of questions. This show did a really good job showcasing them. Rufus Sewell was in it. Joel De La Fuente. Interesting name for an Asian dude to be on. I wonder if he's, interesting name. DJ Qualls, Rupert Evans, Kerry Hiroyuki Tagwa, Alex Davalos, Luke Kleintank. There were some really good actors and actresses in this series. Rick Worthy, Tate Donovan, it's another guy I'd recognize. There's a bunch of recognizable faces in this series. And it focuses on a few main characters. It focuses on a woman and her partner, her husband, I believe, and how she somehow gets caught up in all of these different relationships, not even just romantic, but just relationships, based on her train of thought and her, and again, questions of morality, questions of when is the time to rise up and say something, what are the consequences for doing so, and all the rest. Really amazing show. It's a 4-season show. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. The next show that really, this is like my Roman Empire for the year, was this show, Medici. It focused on the Italian Renaissance, multi-generations, and there's shows out there that touch on this family, showcase this family, shows about other royal families, showcase this family. And I read a book about them after watching the show, and I just feel like this family story is so magnificent. I mean, it's in the name. I lived, breathed, thought, drank the show for so long. I still think about this show there's not a day that goes by where I don't think about how good this show was. It was so amazing. And the cast was, you couldn't get a better cast. You just couldn't. It focused on a lot of the things that I really care a lot about. History, art, architecture, banking, politics, the Vatican. Like, it just covered every single base, like scratched every itch for me. Like, honestly, as far as plotline goes, it had everything. It literally had everything. I mean, the warring between factions, the time period, and the kind of way that the time period shaped the show, and what it was like to live back then, and what it was like to live as an artist back then, they kind of touched on, and all these different massive figures that all somehow came together in this time period. It reminds me of reading Andy Warhol's memoir, where there's a point in history where there's just a renaissance, like there's just an overflowing of creativity and human advancement, and just somehow all of these iconic figures to human civilization somehow are all born and bred at the same time to interact and really with each other and really shape society. There were so many great, like I said, great actors and actresses in this series. Daniel Sharman played Lorenzo for 2 seasons. Genevieve Carlson played his wife. Lucrezia Donati, who was his mistress, was played by Alessandro Mastro, and then it says something or other. It says Sebastian De Souza played Sandro Botticelli. Contessina, the matriarch of the family in the first season, and then ended up being his grandmother, was played by Annabelle Scioli. Sarah Parrish played Lorenzo's mother. Bianca's mother, Giuliano's mother. Giuliano was played by Bradley James, which, if you love Bradley James, you're going to love this show. If you love any of these actors, you're going to love this show. Aurora Rufino was played Bianca. Callum Blake played her partner, Carlo Medici. There were so many other important historical figures even, and other royal figures that were also played in this show, that kind of what you would consider side characters, but also really left a mark on the family and history, like Bastiano Soderini, Marco Bello, who was kind of like Cosimo's right-hand man. Cosimo played again the patriarch of the family in the first season. Lorenzo played his brother. or not Lorenzo played his brother. Stuart Martin played his brother. Stuart Martin was in Jamestown. Loved him in this show. Savonarola, who really, again, historical figure. Savonarola really crossed a lot of boundaries that shouldn't have been, you could really argue, shouldn't have been crossed as a priest. And he really needed to have stayed in his lane. He was really, I thought, well, I'm not going to spoil this for you, but it is a historical story. And basically what I'll say is what Daniel Sharman said, playing Lorenzo on his deathbed, said to Savonarola, literally, they wrote what he would have said on his deathbed to Savonarola so well regarding history and everything. He really said that really, really well. There were some actors that I noticed from other shows that I watched that really did a great job. The guy that played Francesco, it was honestly, I did a lot of research on the show after watching it. He was actually Italian. I mean, full-blown Italian. He didn't even speak English really like that. He did such a great job playing his role, saying his lines in English. He really did a great job. Sean Bean was in this show as Jacopo, Patsy, kind of the leader of one of the rival families. He was great in this. I'm looking for the guys that I was talking about. Some of them only played in like 1 or 2 episodes. There were some, oh God, what do you call it? I'll try and figure out that name, what I'm looking for later, the word that I'm looking for later. I thought, there were some people in this show that popped up that, like Julian Sands, he played, Lorenzo's dad, which, by the way, he passed away recently, which I couldn't believe. Ray Stevenson, also passed away recently, which I couldn't believe. He played King Ferrante in this show. He was in 2 episodes. He's also recently passed. And then there was, I'm trying to see. There was a guy that had a spot. Donatello was played by Ben Starr, who is also in Jamestown. And he only was in 1 episode. That was short-lived. There were many appearances by all these different figures, historical figures in the show. Like there was an appearance made by Leonardo da Vinci more than once. Vicari, who played a really significant role in history. If I'm not mistaken, he wrote the lives of the artists. Or is that Vasari? I think that's Vasari. I'm getting my V's mixed it up here, I think. Emmett J. Scanlon played Guido Battista, the brother of late in life Lorenzo's right-hand man. He played Saul to Paul in the AD Bible series. I love that guy. He's great. I wish they put him in more stuff, honestly. I think Vasari, let me see. Vasari is what I'm talking about here. Let me see. And then there was Machiavelli. I think Machiavelli even made an appearance, or maybe Vasari didn't make an appearance, and it was Machiavelli. Maybe I'm getting my historical writers messed up here, but the point was there was a lot of people that made appearances in the show, and I was very impressed with the entire the soundtrack. Absolutely killer. The soundtrack is so amazing. I wish that they had it on CD. They don't have it in physical form. That soundtrack it's so unbelievably good. Even one of the interviews, or one of the promotional pieces that they did after the show was released, even Bradley James said, that soundtrack is just when you listen to it, you literally can't stop playing it, because it makes you feel like, I don't know if it's like an ancestral thing or what it is, but man, that soundtrack gets my blood pumping, y'all, for real. Speaking of amazing soundtracks, Daisy Jones and the Six was much beloved by almost everybody this year. Sam Claflin, the king of book to movie adaptations, did not disappoint. His voice certainly did not disappoint. His persona on screen did not disappoint. Some people had the problem with his age. He's getting up there in age. Yeah, he certainly is. And he doesn't. Here's what I'll say. I think they could get away with it. And here's why. Because a lot of the people that were in that scene back then looked really strung out and looked really old for their age, because of all the drugs and sex and all that other shit they were doing at the time. So I think they could definitely get away with it. I was stunned. I was flabbergasted by his voice. I was flabbergasted by her voice. Lisa Marie's daughter. Absolutely stunned. This show was just so good. The soundtrack was, again, talk about a piece of art that really made a mark on this year. This show really made a mark. Riley Keough, I don't even know if I'm saying her name right, but she, damn, there's not a day that goes by, again, where I don't think about how good their voices are. Like, damn, like, who knew she could sing? But, like, I know she came from a long line, but damn. But who really, the biggest surprise was, damn, who knew Sam could sing like that? I mean, Jesus Lord. His voice, man. So amazing. So extremely attractive his voice was. Suki Waterhouse did such a good job in this. Camelia Marone. They just all played their part. It was just great. And even the one that played Simone, her voice. Oh my gosh! And they were teasing a tour, like a real life tour with this fake band. It's now a real. They all know how to sing and play instruments. They were teasing that. And I'm like, please, do not threaten me with a good time. I would literally, people are taking out loans to see Taylor Swift. I would take out a loan to see Sam Claflin sing on stage. I would literally take out a loan. I'm not even joking. So, please don't threaten me with a good time. I would love to see that next year. Or this year, next year, whenever they want to do it. Man, ain't no rush. But now, Suki, just like a real band, Suki's done got knocked up. So it's not like she's going on stage anytime soon. She's having a child with Robert Pattinson. So that ain't going to happen this year. So maybe we'll have to, maybe we'll get a Daisy Jones and the Six tour in 2035 if we live to see that long. If we live to see that year. If we live that long. So maybe we'll see that then. The fourth show I watched this year that was really amazing, that was so underrated, and I heard a lot of people shitting on this show for whatever reason. I don't know why this show was so good. Kaleidoscope. Listen, this show also had Rufus Sewell in it, and it had my all-time favorite black actor. If you don't consider him black, I don't know what's wrong with you, but if you want to say person of color, whatever floats your boat, Giancarlo Esposito is literally my favorite black actor of all time. This show also had the black girl in it who played his daughter from the 100. I'm going to tell you guys something else right now too. The white young guy that played in this movie looked like a toss between the guy that was in this movie, and not in this movie, in this show. This show had this show had really bad ratings. I don't know why. I literally don't know why. The guy that played Stan in this show, Peter Mark Kendall, looks like a toss between, like, if Jack Quaid and Matt McAndrew had a son, that would be this guy. And he's, like, beyond attractive as well. Jai Courtney was in this show. Toddy Gabrielle was the name of the girl that played Leo's daughter. Paz Vega was in this show. This show was just so good. And this show was based on... the plot line of this show was... It was a heist show. And it was, Esposito played the leader along with Vega, and they played the leader of this ragtag group, and they attempt a heist at Roger Salas's, played by Rufus Sewell's, job, place of work, business, and there's a lot that goes wrong. There's a lot that goes, well, not so much that goes right, but it's a really great show, and I don't know why everyone's shitting on this, and I don't know why no one's talking about this. Another show that was released, a show that was released right at the start of last year, actually. Another show that was, again, so impactful to pop culture is The Bear. I don't know why I was never put on to this show, and I'm now fully on board. There's a reason why everyone's talking about this show, and it's because it's a masterpiece. It's a true masterpiece. It's a show about a young chef, talented young chef, whose brother kills himself, and he has to take over the business because it's in his brother's will to do so. And the story focuses on him and his cousin, who's now his right-hand man in this, and everybody else that was already working at the restaurant, and as well as the family, and how it got to the point where his brother killed himself, and the kind of just, the family and how they worked and operated, and his sister basically acting as the one keeping check of the books. So basically, it's a story of three siblings. The oldest brother, I think the middle brother, and I would say the youngest sister. Although the youngest sister and the middle brother could be reversed. It doesn't really matter. Story of three siblings. The oldest kills himself, and now they're faced. The brother and sister that are remaining are faced with running this restaurant with their cousin along with their uncle Jimmy. And I think, who played, shit, they don't even have this shit right here. I think their mother, I think, is played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and I don't even like Jamie Lee Curtis on a personal level, but I can't even knock her acting ability. She knows how to play her part for real, and make it so realistic. I think that's what was so good about the show, is the realism, from how the family interacted to how the restaurant employees were like a family of their own, and that work-life balance, and how sometimes it can get out of control and overwhelming. And the addition of a younger group of people thrown into the mix, how that can mess with things. The whole family business dynamic. Just, man, like, I'm telling you, this show, again, is one of the best shows of our time, honestly. It's got Jeremy Allen White, Ebon Moss Backrack, Oliver Platt, Abby Elliott, Maddie Matheson, John Bernthal, who plays a big role. I mean, when this guy gets on screen, he steals the show. And he plays the brother that killed himself, and he's only got a few episodes, but the guy steals the show. I had told you guys about a movie that I had watched earlier this year called Brothers. The dining room scene in that movie, very reminiscent of the dining room Christmas scene in the second season of this show. Very, very similar. Very, very impactful and profound. The acting on screen is just impeccable acting. Just taken aback, really, at how good the show was. Really just taken aback. And there's a reason why everyone is talking about it and looking forward to the third season. It's because this is a literal masterpiece, this show. And then not even mentioning, I think my favorite side character of this show, I'm not a big fan of Sydney at all. I think she's very annoying. A very annoying addition to the show, but you've got to have that realism there. Marcus and Will Poulter, and that episode was just, I can't even tell you what a treat this show is. What a treat. And again, very realistic with the family dynamic aspect, how things look in that kind of a household at that time of year, and just the way that the interactions is very realistic. Very real and raw. I think that's what's making a comeback in 2024 is the realness and the rawness. We don't want any of this fake fairy tale bullshit. We want real, real, real. We want to be able to relate to what is being shown to us on screen because that's how it used to be back in the day. That's what we want back. So, and I think that this show really is a testament to that fact that people are sick of the fake nonsense. They want to see real. They want to be able to sit down and relate. In some cases laugh, some cases not laugh. The way in which a restaurant business works, so many real parts to this story. It's just an amazing show, really. So that sums it up for the shows. My documentary recommendations are this. Starting off with The Booksellers. This documentary was so beautiful, it damn near made me cry. I think it actually made me cry at how beautiful it was. If you don't know, one of my hobbies slash jobs slash kind of areas of expertise now is book collecting. Oh my lord. Book collecting and book selling. And a lot of the people on this documentary I recognized from Pawn Stars. But I also was really interested to see the New York City scene of booksellers, and just their perspective on how book selling has changed, why they still do it, the art of it, the fascination with it. It was just so... It brought a tear to my eye because it's a area now of a point of interest for me that I really find fascinating and really have a connection with now. And just watching them go, like, still to this day, like, not caring the state of the world and just the way that, yeah, they're at a disadvantage, but they're like in a David versus Goliath situation here, and that they're still choosing to fight in their own way was just beautiful. I mean, I just think that it's just a great story. I think that they showcased I just loved it. I loved it. It's one of my favorite points of interest now, and I just literally cried after watching that documentary. It was so good. A good documentary will literally make you cry. And another documentary that made me cry this year, for different reasons, was Into the Weeds. I'm going to be doing a whole review video. I've still got to edit it for this channel, based on... came out this year, watched it in theaters. It was in theaters for one day only, October 3rd. And I actually got tickets to see this thing from the man, the myth, the legend, who this documentary is about, Lee Johnson. This was a case that, because I've been so interested in the impact of genetically modified food, agriculture, just the kind of pesticide, all that kind of stuff. It fascinated me as a kid in middle school, and it's even more fascinating to me now. Like last year, in my top 6 book wrap up, I had mentioned that I had read the Monsanto Papers, and that this documentary came out this year on the heels of me reading that and talking to him. Short discussion in the DM, And I was able to actually go get tickets to see this movie for free from Lee Johnson. And honestly, one of the highlights of my year, to be honest. I've had a lot of ups and downs last year. I mean, like everybody does every year. But this documentary was so real, again, raw, emotional, relevant, just serious subjects that we're talking about here, and the way that he suffered, and the way that the evil company Monsanto, now slash Bayer, whatever you want to call it now, how they really put him through the ringer to get what he rightfully deserved. And the documentary touched on a lot of the same things that the book did. The book went into a lot more detail, but the movie covered things that the book didn't, like the impact of those pesticides on not just humans, but nature and animals and insects, and the kind of life and biodiversity that makes up this planet. Okay, and it was a must watch, for sure. It's up now for streaming. It has been since, I think, early December. But it's available free to stream from the comfort of your own home. And definitely the documentary of the year for me. Because, like, reading it and seeing it on screen is two totally different things. Reading the book and, like, having an idea of what life is like for him now is one thing, but actually seeing how it looks is very difficult to watch, honestly, especially after having that kind of connection to the guy actually in real life. That was a very difficult thing for me to watch. It's difficult for anyone who has a soul to watch, because of what they put him through, and what they continue to put everybody through by committing the atrocities that they're committing on such a mass scale. The absolute accomplishment that was the case, and him winning that case with his lawyers, is not to be overlooked. That was such a big, monumental moment in history that I feel is been glossed over with. And bringing this documentary out, I feel like restarts the conversation that people really need to be having about where are you putting your money, where are you going to, what are you eating, what are you consuming, what are you breathing in, what are you walking on, where are you actually in the scope and magnitude of things on Earth. Are you being poisoned right now? Are you deciding to poison yourself with these chemicals that they're producing? Do you know anybody that has been affected by this? And the list goes on, but this documentary brings up so many important conversations that, again, have been addressed, but not to the degree that it's been resolved. And so, what an amazing documentary. Definitely the documentary of the year, in my opinion. And it's a must watch. A must watch. Seriously. The third documentary I'm recommending to you was called Make People Better. Now listen, guys. This one has been on my list to watch for a while. And let me tell you something. Going into the new year, you're going to want to watch this, okay? You're going to want to watch this. This documentary was released in 2022. This documentary is kind of frightening. And, kind of frightening, to be honest with you. I watched it. It's on Tubi for free. It's on all these different platforms for free. But this documentary covers a topic that definitely more than covered, a topic that I'd slightly gone into, which is the purposeful genetic modifications now of human beings. So now we've moved from one extreme to the ultimate extreme, which is now taking this technology and using it to genetically modify human beings, which I can't even get too much into this conversation on YouTube anymore because it's just so risky. It's so risky to get into this conversation, but I'm talking about a documentary that is based on a real story that really happened that nobody knows about. Apparently, nobody knows about this story. There have been a lot of stories that have come out this year about the Chinese government doing some really disturbing experiments, like trying to make super soldiers, trying to make human beings that can withstand radioactive fallout. There's been some disturbing articles that have come out about their ability to literally mind control and basically put people to sleep at their whim and at their demand. But this documentary was wow. This documentary talks and touches on this phenomenon with the CCP communist government and what it is that they're doing behind closed doors. Now, this story is about a Chinese scientist, and he was in with the whole crowd of people that had actually discovered DNA, RNA, all these kinds of strands, these big advances in human civilization. And he was in with that crowd. He was going to their conferences. He was going to their talks, all of this, going to all of these different places. And he had actually spoken with the guy that had discovered, let me see. I want to find this guy's name so I'm being accurate here. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. I feel like that's not even accurate. I think his name... Okay. I think it was James Watson. James Watson, I believe, was the guy that told him... Yes. James Watson. I'm pretty sure. There's a whole bunch of other dudes that were mentioned, name dropped in here, like Francis Crick, Friedrich Mischler. All of these guys that played a huge, and girls in one case, or a few cases, played a huge role in the way that humans look at other human beings. I'm pretty sure, though, that James Watson was the one that told this guy to go ahead and do the experiment. And he had asked him a few questions, 2 questions, I believe, this Chinese scientist in the documentary. And that's where this documentary name comes from. And he had asked him a few questions. The first question was, did you know that, like, basically, did you know how big of a deal this was going to be when you discovered it? And then he's basically said yes. And then he said, did you anticipate the idea that you finding this was going to eventually lead to the inevitable genetic modification of human beings? And his 3-letter answer, because he was writing it down because he couldn't speak or couldn't really understand the guy because he was Chinese, was make people better. And basically that kickstarted this Chinese scientist into then actually creating, and this is no bullshit, actually creating, and I'm shocked that nobody's talking about this, actually creating the world's first genetically modified human beings. No bullshit. The first genetically designed designer babies. They literally have when you see Divergent and the last movie, the last book, Allegiant, where they're going through and they're talking about humanity and society doing that. That was something that was sci-fi 10, 15, 12 years ago. Now it's actually real. It's reality now. They're actually doing this. He actually did this. And now the whole ethics, moral question comes into play here. Okay? Basically what had happened is this guy went to all these different conferences and he got such an inflated ego about himself that he really thought he could do this and get away with it. And that he would actually be looked upon as this pioneer of sorts. He really thought he was going to do some world-changing, really amazing work, okay? And he thought the world would thank him for it, because there are things that he was looking at, like the whole premise of him doing this was in China they have a serious AIDS epidemic because of the fact that back in the day there was some kind of injection, some kind of something that the needles were dirty and had infected a whole bunch of people with AIDS. And so he decided to try and fix this by genetically modifying certain strands in the DNA that would actually make you immune to actually getting seriously ill from this. So he did this to a pair of twins, female twins, and he does this. He thinks he has it all under control. He had asked for people in the CCP government for permission to do this. They kind of gave him the nod. He thought he was totally chill until he does this. It leaks and it becomes worldwide news. It's funny because it's worldwide news, but yet nobody's talking about this. But anyway, it gets worldwide news, and he thinks he's getting nervous because he didn't really want to release the information that fast. He was going to present it in a way that he thought was acceptable, that would be acceptable to society. Okay, but what he didn't understand is the people that came before him even had problems having society accept certain scientific advancements. You could say advancements. Are we really advancing, or are we really degrading ourselves to the point that having a regular child isn't good anymore, to now we literally have to genetically modify them because we're so egotistical and because we're so psychopathic that we feel like we have to create the child of our dreams, which is so beyond fucked up, it's not even funny. But so it leaks, and the world is in an absolute tizzy. And mind you, I'm pretty sure this is going on in the same time period of 2020. I think it's going on in the same, if I can look this up, I believe if I'm not mistaken, this is going on at the time of, is going on kind of in and around the 2020 time period, so you get an idea. Okay. And so this guy does this. He goes to a conference. He's asked many questions. He's really getting shit all over on, even though the people that he was in communication with were in private 100% behind what he was doing. But because he was the first one, and because it is so unethical in so many different ways, he was the sacrificial lamb, and the CCP communist government swooped him immediately after he was done with his speech and basically kidnapped him. And he hasn't been seen since. Now, it's said that he's alive. I'm sure they're keeping him alive because of the information that he has is key to the weaponization of this kind of technology, militarily speaking. Okay, they would never off this guy. Not at all. But he faced 3 years in prison. And he's not allowed to be basically anywhere near the public eye anymore. He will probably be used militarily, and he'll probably be forced to weaponize this against his will, because the truth is he had decent intentions going into this, even though he realized it could be weaponized. That wasn't his main concern. His main concern was taking this and trying to give it to the masses so they could choose to genetically modify their children, which to me is totally unethical, but to him it was going to solve a lot of the world's problems. And they use him as a sacrificial lamb. The entire science community threw this guy under the bus, when I tell you. Threw him under the bus, under the jail. And now he's taking one for the team. And now you have all of these scientists that had supposedly were so against this are now seen in literal videos talking about, well, now that he's done it, now he's opened the door. Now let us in America do this. Now let us everywhere across the globe do this, across the world do this. Let us all partake in this experimentation of human beings. So he was a sacrificial lamb, and he had no inkling, like, I think he had some inkling that this could have been a possibility, but he was just so high on himself and his achievement, his perceived achievement. We don't even really know if these girls are even still alive and what they look like right now. And that will never be shown to anybody. That will be known in private, and that's for the CCP to know, and for the CCP to know only, and maybe this guy. But he took one for the team. He didn't realize that their plan was to set him up the entire time. Poor guy. Was to set him up the entire time, make him be the fall guy, and then because he opened the door, well, now because he did it, now it's okay for us to do it. So the guy got totally conned. He thought these people that were actually in it for the right reasons, and he thought that they were there to help society and advance civilization like he was, supposedly advance civilization like he was. And what the real reality of it was is that they were always looking to throw him under the bus and make him the sacrificial lamb so they could go ahead and partake in their own experimentation. So this documentary, I'm not sure why this story is not being talked about. I think it's very taboo, and I think a lot of, truthfully, and to be honest with you, I don't think many people would even believe that this is real. Even though this is a real story, there's a lot of people that genuinely would not believe this and refuse to believe it because it's so sci-fi. Like, this is literally sci-fi, guys. I mean, we're living in a sci-fi movie. I mean, this is the kind of stuff, like I said, Showcase and Divergent, it was looked at as fiction, science fiction, about a decade ago. A decade plus ago, and now it is actually reality. And I think a lot of people in this country have a hard time with reality and would have a hard time with this reality, which is that there are actually genetically modified human beings walking around. And it's because of this Chinese scientist's research and experiment. And like I said, we don't know if those girls are still alive. We have no idea. We have no idea. We have no inclination as to how those girls are doing. But this documentary needs to be seen, so you know what the future really looks like. The future is not sunshine and rainbows. It's parents picking out of a magazine, like they're choosing a haircut, what kind of child they want their child to be like. And it's also getting into the Brave New World aspect of it, where you're making a bunch of kids that are all looking the same, acting the same, and are the same at a root level because you made it to be so. So what a documentary, what a year in film, cinema, show, like all of this stuff was documentaries. I mean, it just top tier. And I am going to give some honorable mentions for movies. Honorable mentions for movies. Margin Call. That was a good one. Boys of Abu Ghraib. That was a really good one. Courageous. That's a Christian movie. Really good. Donnie Brasco, Equilibrium, Public Enemies. And One Special Night. A show honorable mention would be Saints and Strangers. I thought that was good. I thought that was really good. Jesus of Nazareth was good. I liked A Town Called Malice. I thought that was alright. On to the disappointments. I was totally disappointed in Rumors of Wars. That was totally inaccurate. A Star is Born. It was my first time watching it this year. I hated it. I didn't think Into the Wild was as all it was cracked up to be either, to be honest with you guys. Wasn't too big of a fan. High Rise was a total waste of my time. High Rise with Tom Hiddleston and oh my god, what's her name? Elizabeth Moss. That movie was so trash. Don't even waste your time. And I think that just about sums it up for the year. So, I would hope that you guys get something out of this. It's been a long video because it's been a lot to cover. I hope you guys get something out of it. If you guys saw a really good show, movie, documentary this year, let me know in the comments. I hope that you guys watch a lot of these that I recommended because they're really relevant and needed to watch at the time right now. So, with that being said, I think this was probably the best year for film in a while, and I don't know if it's gonna last. But it was really, really good this year. So, till next time, next year, hope to see you again for these top 20s and top 6 list. Till next time, bye guys.